Hey, what's going on everybody? My name is Cruz and welcome back to another video. This is how I use the Glitz Reverb on the Line 6 HX Stomp. But before we get started, please do me a favor. Go ahead and like this video, subscribe and leave a comment below, and hit the bell icon so you know every single time I upload a video. So with the new year 2021, I decided to look back and I realized something. One of the reasons I started this YouTube channel to begin with was because I had this idea of starting a series called How I Use It. See, back in the day, my friends used to hit me up, other guitarists, and ask me about different products that I would either be using or that maybe they just wanted my opinion on because they wanted to purchase it. So pedals and guitar strings and picks. And the way I would always answer them back was, well, the way I use it is. And so I always found myself giving them my perspective of how I would either use a product or how I was currently using that product at that moment. So I wanted to revisit that series and thought to myself it would be a great thing to kick the series back up again, the How I Use It series. For the first episode, I wanted to touch on the reverb of my HX Stomp setting. I've gotten a lot of questions about it since I've switched over to the HX Stomp reverb, and I figured it's time for me to finally reveal how I come up with those settings, why, and hopefully they'll help you along the way. Now keep in mind, I want all players to understand you don't have to have an HX Stomp necessarily, or even a Helix style pedal to benefit from this video. I believe that some of the things I'm going to talk about are going to help you with your reverb journey as a whole, especially if you want to use the Glitz Reverb in the way that I use it, and that's with ambient or praise and worship style music. I think it's definitely going to give you a little bit of insight in how you can better approach reverb. So without further ado, let's get started. I'm going to show you a screenshot of the Glitz Reverb and how it comes out of the box. So if you have an HX Stomp specifically, or maybe a Helix, this Line 6 Glitz Reverb is now pretty much stock in everything they release. And so this is how it would come right out of the box. Okay, so if you look at the settings, 6.9 on the decay, 18 ms on the pre-delay, so on and so forth. So I want you to hear what that sounds like, and it's a little bit different than what you heard in the beginning of the video. Now keep in mind, in the beginning of the video I did have delays, but you get it. It's there is an ambient wash thing that's happening where the reverb is playing a really important role. So I want you to hear what this Glitz Reverb sounds like before I start applying my settings to it. It doesn't necessarily sound bad, but there is some things that I would like to change in order to make it more of my own and to give it more of a Cruz spin. The first thing I hear is I kind of want it to warm up a little bit. It's reminding me a lot of sort of like the reverb that we're getting from a Strymon Blue Sky Cloud. So it's, you know, not too much shimmer. I don't want shimmer, but what I do want is just warmth and beauty, like a nice little fluffy cloud of ambience that sits underneath my tone. So now let's bring up my Cruz setting here so you can compare it to what we've got going on with the Glitz Reverb. I'm going to walk you through each one of the settings here that the Glitz Reverb gives you an option to alter. Let's start with the decay. I actually lower the decay to 6.0 rather than keeping it at 6.9. It's a slight difference, a slight hair of a difference, but it makes the difference, especially when I'm combining it with delays and other effects. I think it's very beneficial for me, and I think it'll be for you as well, though you don't want the reverb to last forever, right? Now look at the pre-delay. On the Glitz Reverb, they only put it at 18 ms, and I put that all the way to 165 ms. Very quickly, I want you to hear what that sounds like. I'm going to turn my delays off, and I want you to listen to how long it takes before my reverb comes on. Now, I don't know if you can hear that. That is, there's a very slight sort of delay before the reverb actually comes in. Why do I do that? It allows my tone to be the first thing that is heard prior to the ambient wash that comes and follows that through. I want the tone of the guitar to be the focal point. I don't want the ambient wash to be the focal point. So it's very important to me that we make sure that the listener can focus their ears on what's actually being played, the instrument, versus just the ambience. The ambience is going to be a nice, subtle thing that's happening in the background. So we want to make sure that that pre-delay is relatively high. One of the keys to any reverb setting for me personally is pre-delay. Okay, now let's move on. We're going to look at the low cut. The line 6 low cut is off, and I actually bring that up to 470. The reason for that is because I really wanted to warm it up quite a bit. Now if you look at the high cut, we move on. Line 6 has it at 16.0. I lower that all the way down to where it says 500. That's why I like the Glitz Reverb, because it allowed me to sort of mess with its tone a little bit without necessarily putting out an EQ. I don't want to put an EQ on a delay or reverb because it'll alter my sound on the guitar. So I only want to be able to EQ the actual overall tone, but I don't want the delay or reverb being affected by that. Being able to lower and mess with the high cut, low cut sort of gave me the ability to adjust its tone a little bit, and that's my personal setting. Now we're going to look at the mix. Line 6 has it at 32. I have it at 37. So I kind of raised it up a little bit in comparison to where Line 6 normally has it. But still, the mix, 37%, is very, very low in comparison to where I see a lot of people put their reverb mix, especially when newcomers to ambient music. They think that ambient guitar is just like cranking up delays and reverbs, and that's not true. There's an art to this. There are levels to your delays and reverbs, and I think that the big mistake that people make is bringing up the mix and not realizing that it doesn't need to be very super loud in the mix as a whole. Moving on to the level's unity. I keep it unity as well. The delay, Line 6 has theirs at 64 ms. I have it at 72. The Line 6 has their note sync at quarter note. I left it at that as well. The depth on Line 6 is 3.8. And I left it at 3.8 as well. The X over at 900, I left that at 900 as well. The mod mix that Line 6 has is at 5.0, and I lower that mod mix to 3.5. The modulation in a lot of reverbs oftentimes bothers me. It kind of messes with my ears a little bit. Even in delays where people like adding modulations, and like that's why people like analog delays, because it kind of like starts modulating as it trails. I'm not a huge fan of that. When I hear it, I love it, but when I play with it, I just constantly am worrying about my tuning because I'm hearing a slightly off-pitch thing happening, and that's because it's modulating. So it's hard for me to play with modulation, so I lower it quite a bit, even though that's what oftentimes makes delays and reverbs kind of special, but I lower it in the mix. Finally, the trails is off. I have trails on, and that just means that when I turn the reverb off for whatever reason mid-song, it's not going to just cut the reverb off. It's going to trail. I do have my HX Stomp set up with a mute switch option so that I can just mute it if I have to. That will cut all the trails off as well. So I rather have that and that option to be able to mute very quickly if I needed to, versus when I turn the reverb off, that just everything turns off. It just seems a little bit too harsh for me, and so I don't like doing that. For comparison purposes, I want to quickly play you the Line 6 Glitz Reverb as it comes out of the box, and that's what this sounds like. Now we're going to switch over to my Cruz project version of that with all of the settings that I just described to you, and here's what that sounds like. So one of the things that you're going to notice right away is how it's not quite as harsh. And that's because we lowered a lot of that high end, which also kind of plays with the ear and makes it sound like it's just lower in general, even though we brought the mix up. And that's probably why I ended up bringing the mix a little higher than what Line 6 had it, because once I lowered that top end, it kind of got lost a little bit. So I brought it up just a little bit more, just to make sure that it was audible enough to be there but not get in the way. So if you could hear, it's there but it's not getting in the way at all, and it doesn't sound nearly as ambient as it does when I have it fully playing with all of my tones and sounds combined. So that's another thing to remember. As you're stacking, that stuff is going to start creating layers of ambience. So don't go too far in one direction, aka jacking up the mix of your reverb or the level of your reverb, because you're going to have delays, you're going to have other things that are going to add to that ambience, and you don't want it to get lost in the mix. So now we're going to move on very, very quickly to the snapshots. This is what I get questions a lot about the most. My snapshots, I keep increasing my level of reverb goodness so that it can keep sounding more and more ambient. This is my snapshot 2 sound. This is just with the reverb, no delays added. So I pride myself in still being able to play notes on this setting right here. The differences are I've jacked up the decay a lot more to 8.5, so it lasts a lot longer. I've jacked up the pre-delay as well to give me a little bit more space so that I could still play some notes and be audible at 165. Low cut is at 470. High cut is it's all the way down at 500. I've brought up the mix a little bit to 45. Left the level as is. Left everything else as is, going all the way down. So everything else stayed the same. So really the only things I mess with are the top maybe 3 or 4 settings to get this thing to change up a little bit. Now let's move on to Snapshot 3. Snapshot 3 becomes a little bit less playable because I focus on using Snapshot 3 for swells, but I'm going to try to play some notes so you can get a better understanding of what it sounds like. Once again, the delays are off. So that's the beauty about this particular setting, is that it sort of like really puts it into reverb heaven there, but and it's not, to me, to my ears, it's not something I would want to use to play individual notes with, but maybe for some droning or swelling like you heard me switch over to, that's where it's perfect for me. Okay, so the decay, I think we left it at 8.5 on the Snapshot 3. We left the pre-delay at 165, the low cut at 470, but this time what I did was I brought up the high cut a little bit to 3.5. That just made it so that it's not super overwhelmingly woofy sounding. If we had left that high cut completely down, I would have really not been able to get clarity out of this reverb, and it would just become a little bit too kind of overwhelming, and I wouldn't get those clean reverbs that you're hearing with those swells. And then with the mix, we've jacked it up to 60 to really be able to have everything be heard, and then everything else we left it as is. So now I want to quickly play through all 3 snapshots so that you can get an understanding of how I use them in a full setting. I'm going to include my delays in here so you can hear all of my ambient goodness. I hope you've enjoyed that video. Please be sure to do all the things that help this channel grow. Like this video, leave a comment below, subscribe to the channel, and be sure to hit the bell icon so you get an alert every single time I upload a video. Thanks again for watching, and until next time.